It is 3 times, or actually 4 times what the FDA says. So I just want you to know, they do this to her. I cannot believe this. I'm watching this. This is last year. I'm watching it after I've already done these shows for years. I was watching this and I was like, this is like the most dumb thing ever. She comes walking out of the room and I'm standing by the door. Dr. Ars is standing by the door. This little nurse comes walking by in her 20s and I went like this. You ever find it ironic that in your training in nursing school, they taught you that salt's bad for you and increases your risk for high blood pressure and strokes? And they bring this old lady in here who is at a stroke level blood pressure. And the first thing you did was just shove 9,000 milligrams of salt into her bloodstream before a doctor even comes in. I said, what's the irony to you? And the nurse looks at me and goes like this. You know what, doc? They actually don't call it salt water, nor do they reference salt when they talk about fluids. They only call it fluids. And she looks at me and says, every time they ask me to do this, I'm always wondering, why would you give this individual so much salt? Even though that's not what the medical doctors and that's not what the hospital calls it. They just say, make sure the patient gets fluids. The issue is that fluid has 9,000 milligrams of salt. Now, this is interesting. The medical profession knows salt's bad for you. They tell you it's bad for you. But right when you need them, whether in an ambulance, I'm talking about you right now, in the UK, if you in Somerset had a heart attack and an ambulance came to pick you up, before you get to the hospital, you will have an IV drip of salt water going into your veins.
Yeah.
Before you even get there. Before a doctor walks in the room, does an EKG or ECG or any other testing on you, they're going to give you salt without question. They know you need salt. Now, why do they know you need salt?
Why do they know we need it? Yeah.
Because they know everybody on earth is eating less salt than they need. They have actually created an entire culture globally of people, in industrialized nations anyway, to believe the less amount of salt, the better your health outcomes. They know they have pummeled us with propaganda in elementary schools, in our nurses' stations in those schools. They know that your medical doctors, billboards, advertising, everybody, celebrities have told you salt's bad for you. Okay? Everybody's told you that. So they know everybody is deficient in salt, and they've created an entire society of people with increased blood pressure, increased risk of strokes and heart attacks. And the first thing you can do to them, without question, is pump them full of salt. And the moment they start pumping salt inside of them, guess what happens in the mind of the patient who is salt deficient? Immediately, emotionally, they feel better.
Yeah.
Mentally, they feel better. Yeah. Their heart palpitations start slowing down. Their kidneys start working better, and they start releasing the excess urine, and their blood pressure starts coming down. Every part of their life feels better, and all they got was salt. And that's before your medical doctor ever comes and talks to you. Now, this is the great setup. They know they have created an entire world of people who believe salt is bad for you, and everyone is primarily restricting the amount of salt in their daily intake. The moment they inject 9,000 milligrams of salt into any human being in an ambulance, in an ICU, in an emergency room, the moment that high amount of salt goes inside of you, your body as a mammal needs more salt. And the moment they give it to you, you are going to immediately start feeling better. And the illusion that the medical doctor helped you feel better in this medical building, in this medical mobile unit called an ambulance, you start thinking to yourself, thank God I called 911, or I called the medical doctor. I went to the ER. Thank God for the medical institution. They made me feel better right away. This is before the medical doctor even walks in. Now, my mother-in-law, for example, is in the hospital. They do a 20-minute push. I asked the nurse, how do you feel about giving my mother-in-law 9,000 milligrams of salt when she has super high blood pressure on stroke level? And she's like, yeah, I always find it ironic. But you know, it's weird. They don't call it salt. They call it fluids. She walks out 20 minutes later, comes in because the bag's empty. That's 9,000 milligrams. Do you know what the next thing she does is? She has been instructed by the MD before she even comes in. The MD's never shown up yet. Before he gets there, he's telling the nurse to do another bag of salt water and do another push. Lady, this is 18,000 milligrams of salt in a woman, my mother-in-law, who has stroke level high blood pressure. And
So
the moment
let me ask you
they do
something
this
now.
push, her blood pressure started coming down. The moment they did the 18,000, it started coming down. By the time he comes in, I'm like, oh my God, it's already 50 points lower than it was before we walked in on both levels. Okay. This is the impact of salt. They didn't even do any drugs or nothing. Isn't that amazing?
I mean, this is mind blowing. So then let me ask you this question. Where is the limit? Where's the crossover? When does it become too much salt?
When does it come too much salt? Let's see. Maybe when your blood pressure gets to such an extremely low level, you're getting vertigo and dizzy.
Okay.
Then you need to back off because
Okay.
your body can take too much of everything, right? I
Right.
will tell you, 6,000 to 9,000 milligrams of salt is the perfect limit for almost every human being on earth. Every human needs 6,000 to 9,000 milligrams of salt. In an emergency situation like a stroke level high blood pressure, like in the hospital scenario I just gave you, they can increase that amount, but only for a short time. They only did that once. They did that
Yes.
before the doctor even got in there, and it
Yeah.
started bringing her blood pressure back down, and that started to work. They never had to give her 18,000 again. If I could get her to listen and trust me over the MDs, which she doesn't, if I could get her to trust me, even with these discussions in front of her, she still believes the MDs, which is quite funny, that the salt is bad for you. They just happen to be using water and her thoughts or processes or fluids to help her.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what she thinks, how this helped. But we're talking about and explaining it to her the whole time. Just recognize the medical profession that continues to tell you worldwide that salt is bad for you uses the same thing they're telling you is bad for you as their first treatment in every scenario you're going to find yourself in. If you in Somerset had a heart attack right now, call 911. They're going to come to your house, pick you up, and start injecting 9,000 milligrams of salt inside of you immediately. They're not even going to talk to anybody. They know you need salt. Why does the medical profession know you need salt? Because they've been lying to you the whole time that salt's bad for you, and they know it. They know they've been lying to you. They know they've got the entire food industry and medical doctor industry convinced in the lie. And they're all telling the same lie.
Okay. So what we're interested in, right, is taking it back into our hands, our health, taking responsibility for our health as individuals. That's what I'm interested in Ayurveda as well. And so
Amen.
what do we now do with this knowledge? How do we use salt in our life?
Yeah, it's great. So very first thing is, we all have to do is come to terms with reality. And the truth is, nothing is more powerful than our own belief systems. This is why it is so well known that propaganda and repeated lies are so powerful. Because if you can get an individual to believe a narrative, oh my goodness, have you not heard of the placebo effect or the nocebo effect? It is absolutely proven. You can get people to believe, even if you didn't do surgery on them, that you did surgery on them. You just put them on anesthesia, wake them up, tell them you did the surgery, but you never did. And these people go off and behave like they actually had the surgery. And they actually don't. They go through rehab, skip rehab, and they're all well. But they never actually had surgery. This is the power of the belief system of the mind.
Yeah.
So the very first thing we need to do is give people information to increase their confidence in their own belief systems or values that are crossing their mind every day. So as they listen to this podcast and I tell you that salt was confirmed worldwide, that the more salt you consume, the better your blood pressure and lower your risk factors for heart attacks and diseases are. The very first thing you should want to do, I would hope, is actually check and see if what I'm saying is true. All you got to do is go look up 2016 on any internet search engine, type in 2016 Tel Aviv salt study or sodium study and Lancet, maybe throw it in there. The study's going to pop right up and go read it. And then you can read on the top of the actual research paper where the American Heart Association threatened them. The Lancet made sure to include it and put that paragraph at the very top of the study. The American Heart Association threatened us to retract this study, and if we didn't, our funding would be threatened, blah, blah, blah. They put that all on there. And then they put retracted across the top because they were threatened, but the entire study is still sitting there. Just go read it. And as you actually build more confidence through knowledge, just go study this stuff and then think to yourself, the medical profession that is telling you salt's bad for you in every scenario, put yourself in every scenario in a hospital ever. And then remember walking down the hospital hallway, looking in every room that has an open door, you're going to see a patient in a bed, and you're going to see an IV stand right next to them. 100% of all the patients. What are they pumping into every sick person on the planet that they are telling you in the media is bad for you? Every person, the entire day they're in there, is being pumped full of salt.
Right.
The whole time. It's not like for an hour. No, it's all 24 hours. They're being pumped full of salt the whole time. The one thing they're telling you is bad for you. It's not bad for you. Use logic, use common sense and rationale. Remember, in England, are there any people that ranch animals, mammals?
Yeah, cows. Yeah, lots of cows. This is a big cow area, Somerset. Yeah.
Do any of those ranchers have salt licks?
I'm sure. Yeah.
Is it common knowledge that farmers who ranch mammals buy blocks of salt and sit it in the yard of every single animal field of any kind? Every animal, I don't care if it's pigs, deer, alpaca, cows, goats. Every farmer knows you have to have a salt lick out there. And they don't restrict how much salt the animals eat. The animals